finding out that the people who you trust and love the most were actually the gutter snipes behind attacks on your person and character, out to get you, hurt you, is a fundamentally very hard blow. I think anybody who has ever struggled with morale realizes that what I'm saying is a situation that leaves one imperiled of sanity and willingness to go forward. Morale is a tough nut to crack in such dire and parched, onerous circumstances. I know a little about how to put together a house of cards of morale from building blocks. So if you're having trouble, you might want to listen up. My motive, of course, is to reach out to somebody who's suffering from despair about Gaza. But I learned it because I was told that there's no such thing as an identity crime involving talking about a deaf man, placing him places he never was, doing things he hadn't done, and manipulating by a neurological implant injury through what they called forces impinging on the persona's experience. A sergeant of the police told me that's not an identity crime. Hollywood can do whatever he wants. Yeah. I'll tell you, I don't know exactly how the building blocks go together with respect to Gaza, but I remember when I felt badly about giving a kind-hearted young man from Palestine that I took to be very good advice. But it was a rubber ball. It bounced back at me and said, keep your advice to yourself. Maybe he can understand. He was talking about trying to reason with Israel. And he was laughing because what he said so transparently made more sense than their fool's allegations. It didn't stop their bombs, that they make no sense at all. And I cautioned him not to beat himself up because there's a certain point where you can't reason with somebody. But I realized later that the fact that he was right can and should be encouraged as part of the educational discourse to cheer him up, to build up his morale. So while my heart was in the right place, I didn't want him to hurt himself senselessly by seeing the vacuous psychological torment that the criminally insane meant for him. I did realize that maybe on reflection it was bringing him peace to try to reason with the incomprehensible and the brutal, just to show himself that he was right. So Tolkien said famously, don't go to a wizard for advice. He will tell you both yes and no. I'm not a wizard. I'm just remembering Tolkien. There's no need to get up on a chair and do it like this here and that there. But they will. This one, particularly, they're triggered. They go searching. They have periscopes looking for things to make them jump up and down, and go do like this here and that there about stuff. You'll get in Seattle too, where the intellectuals are windy with their ability at calculus. They passed that class. Yes, oh, they're Wendy. They work for Adobe. And they can lexicon on To Kill a Mockingbird, but they don't like mockingbirds. Quizlings in Seattle won't for a minute credit anything that I won't even say her name. This is book where this guy really likes the art of another guy. Finds him all beaten up. He says the worst thing in the world is to be put into a room with a rabid animal, with like a demonic plasm of Yoko Ono or something, just needling and hissing and full of its own macabre and hate, seething with malice. And you reason with them with the most profound things that you've ever said. It doesn't change their ravenous self-regard an iota. So there's very little that you can bring to grips with the criminally insane on a psychological level. But there are efforts that are made in the world to limit, by definition, not by palace intrigue, but by academic exchange. There's a difference. You will find people who don't know the difference. There was a man with a Jewish wife and academics who supported the people of Gaza. I don't know how many of the people who are up front and on the front lines of this stuff are sandbaggers. I know that many of them, like Eno, covered for the AIDS attack and were in Medicine Man, and the front's with Mick Jagger, who played in Tel Aviv, and they're lying through their face liars, I call them, which means to the face liars. I don't know how many of them are saying. This guy may have been. I don't know. Who knows? But I haven't studied him. But he was interesting on the topic of Gaza. And he said, the thing is that if reason was going to solve this problem, it would be solved by now. Well, it's like the issue of the International Court of Justice. International law only pertains to recognition within the group of civilized people. And when power succeeds in masquerading as civilized, it can outflank international law by grooming people to accept the unacceptable. International law must pause and refuse to accept the unacceptable. Now, cunning is involved in interrogating the self-respect of international law. Some people are openly contemptuous of international law, and of course, that's the reason why I don't enjoy seeing someone who is right being outsmarted by the demolition forces of people who don't care that they're right and keep on staring at them with ravenous self-regard. Maybe it's good therapy to do it. And one could say that the International Court of Justice is a form of therapy for civilization. The most important thing to understand, however, is this globulus phenomenon of arriving at a vacuum through discourse with the criminally insane and doing more damage to yourself than you would if you didn't try to reason with them, knowing when to just be quiet about it, because share it with somebody who cares, because it's tiresome to be defeated through sacrilegious acts, criminal minds, deceit. Brian Eno, when you are right. It's very sad for me to be in that position myself right now. I've never succeeded in getting my question answered from Greta, whose image is right there behind me. Her presence brings me comfort. Her presence brings me a feeling of rejuvenation. But she's like the hand wringer. She's wrung her hands of the issue of prior genocide, which is what I consider my precinct. You know, if you look at Owen Jones, he was born in 1984. That's the year my father died. Those are the first four numbers of my Social Security card. That is the heart of the mystery. That's when Neil Postman scuttled Orwell's 1984 in favor of Brave New World, when 1984 was the whole phenomenon that was going on. Orwell's. But you're supposed to kneel before the foreign English postman. You see, it's all index pizzazz. So, he doesn't understand the trajectory from the 60s to the 80s, as well as someone who lived as a child under the generation that moved the pretensions of the 60s. I was 8 or 9 years old when Robert Fripp was 23. And they considered me eligible for a foreign super draft. That I have been fighting to understand. And I'm in the position of this man who is bringing heart to himself by thinking out loud about how revoltingly petty the pretensions of the Zionists are when it comes to the humanity of the Palestinian people. Because they're so transparently and obviously right. And Joseph Biden is a sinister individual. He knows perfectly well that the reason people are out on the streets is because we don't like hospital murders, because we don't like children screaming under rubble while we sleep at night. One pauses to think of the secret weapons that these asinine Cold War wave riders from the Red Scare with their pronouncements that pocketing and pilfering briberies is somehow Democratic Party altruism. Broker their self respect and public images. Hollywood was supposed to resolve some of those things with the subtext of Wizard of Oz and Citizen Kane. But unfortunately, Hollywood has been the handmaiden of the great dictators from the time it started. So the only thing surprising about Leonard Sudini is that anyone could be surprised.